This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast for Friday, May 26th. It's show 241. My name's Peter Thomas Fornatal, and I'm back with you for this abbreviated edition of the DRF Players Podcast. Why is it abbreviated? Are we worn out from the Preakness and the Derby and need a little bit of a step back before the... No, nothing like that. Technical and life difficulties. I'll just say this, the single best piece of IT advice I have ever received or ever given. Just turn it off and turn it on. Here, JK and I were struggling for 10 minutes trying to be able to talk to each other and actually hear, playing around with settings, doing 17 different things. Nothing worked. Turn it off, turn it on. Like magic, we have the DRF Players Podcast for today. As for the other end of the show and why I have to bail 5 minutes early, my nanny bailed on me. Childcare struggles. Somebody's got to pick the child up at preschool. That someone today is me. Don't want to get in trouble with the teachers, so we'll be bailing a little bit early. But we do have, more than a half hour, not as much as 40 minutes to spend with you on this Friday afternoon. Joining me, as always, back on the planet Texas, the People's Champ, Jonathan Kinchin. JK, has your day been as chaotic as mine?
No, I had a little morning to just kind of relax. I watched, I don't know if I'm late on this, but I watched this new Bear Grylls show where he has celebrities go with him. And the only episode that my eyes went to when I was flipping through Hulu was Marshawn Lynch. And it was freaking brilliant. I mean, it was awesome. He is hilarious. At one point, he threatens to put his hands on Bear Grylls if he makes him do anything crazy again. It was awesome.
That's fantastic. Of course, Marshawn Lynch has had some, our friend Robert has had some dealings with him, as I recall.
He did. We were in San Francisco, and it's one of the funniest things ever. Robert tried to take a selfie with Marshawn in the background, and Marshawn calmly, not what I expected, came over here, put his arm around Robert, and said, "Hey, man, I'd appreciate it if you delete that."
Pretending that he wasn't taking Marshawn's picture selfie, that kind of style.
Yeah. And Robert said, Robert's like, okay, and deleted it, and that was, he goes, "I appreciate it," and he walked away. So I think most people would have expected a different reaction out of him based on some of his antics, but he was really pretty calm and nice about the whole situation.
This was back when there was all kinds of press about him, like that story getting onto page 6 wouldn't have done him any favors, as I recall. But what I really want to know, what was Marshawn wearing?
I think he had on a sweatsuit, like a velour sweatsuit,
nice.
if I can recall.
That's what I was hoping. I was hoping you were either going to tell me that or he just wore his pajamas to the club, one or the other.
But it was 5 minutes after when we walked in, we saw him sitting on his Lamborghini, on the hood of his Lamborghini in front of the place.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous here on the DRF Players Podcast today. Lots of stuff to talk about. Let's start off by diving right into some of the Belmont Day news. We were learned this week through the pages of Daily Racing Form that Irish Warcry, originally we were told he was going to be laid up and pointed to the Haskell, a race of great personal significance for his owner. But now we're hearing he may make an appearance on Belmont Day. What do you make of this news, Jonathan?
What's funny is a lot of these Belmont news situations, I had some family things come up the last day and a half, so I've been kind of disconnected. So a lot of these things you tell me will be the first time I've heard it, so it might come for a real good. Set us up for some good natural reaction. I thought it was kind of crazy they were going to lay the horse up until the Haskell anyway, right? I mean, if he's a healthy, happy horse, what's wrong with an opportunity to try to win a Grade 1 Classic and make a stallion of this horse? If he wins the Belmont and the Haskell, and you tie that in with the Wood, I don't see how he's not a stallion. Anyways, it sounds great to me. I don't really care. I'm not crazy about the horse. I don't see a world in which I bet the horse, but makes for a much more interesting storyline.
Yeah, it sounded, the logic reading between the lines in the article sounded a little funny. It was almost like, we beat We beat Cloud Compute. Maybe it's not funny. I'll just tell you what it was, and you tell me if you buy it or not. They beat Cloud Computing by 8 or whatever it was the last time they faced. The Holy Bull back in January, February, whenever that was. They beat Classic Empire so soundly. So seeing those two in what for me was a very painful photo in the Preakness Stakes running so well, maybe they just thought, hey, what the heck are we waiting on the sidelines for? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely does. I mean, the race feels kind of wide open. I think we both have expressed how we feel about Classic Empire, but he's found three ways this year to lose. So if you have a horse that's healthy and has excelled against some of these common opponents, why not give it a shot? And not to mention, a 1.5-mile race is just an equalizer. I mean, not an equalizer, but it's kind of it kind of tosses out a lot of conventional handicapping thoughts, and weird things happen. And maybe this is the only time Irish War Cry will ever beat Classic Empire. And so they better go ahead and jump on it now.
We've talked before about how these horses training at Fair Hill, Graham Motion's training style, these are things that often lend horses to getting more stamina and being able to excel at longer distances. So the race makes sense. The only thing that I don't love is there are certain trainers, and I put Graham Motion in this category. I always feel just a little bit better betting their horses when I know they've circled that race on the calendar 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 6 months out, whatever it is. He's the kind of trainer I love with a target more than, okay, 3 weeks before the race, now we're gonna do it. But that said, not going to necessarily keep him off my tickets, just a stray observation. You did say something about you weren't crazy about him from a betting point of view. Why do you feel negative about him parimutually?
I'm just not sure. The same reason I was kind of, semi against him in the Derby. I'm not sure he's really that good. The 2 races in which he did run well, he had dream situations. He was loose down in South Florida. It was the Classic Empire race that he ran like, I think it was, it was the Holy Bull.
Yeah, Holy Bull.
He was loose in the Holy Bull, and he sat the ideal, perfect trip in the woods. So he's going to have to prove it to me, overcoming some adversity before I jump on the bandwagon of what I would think would be a shorter than I would like price, 5-6 to 1 in the Belmont.
So hard to know before we know who shows up. But let me ask you this. I was of the mind, and this is putting you on the spot, and you probably have to look at some stuff you don't necessarily have access to answer this, but the bias, there was a big bias on Wood Day, in my opinion. And I guess it comes down to whether you feel that bias was favoring horses who were like on or near, which would mean that Irish War Cry got the dream trip that you described. In my view, that day was at least as much about the inside as it was about being on or near the lead, which to me means horse actually ran pretty darn well. And I don't know, we've seen now 2 sort of crazy, unexpected, not so good efforts from this horse after big races. You wonder, in my mind, maybe he's just an in and outer, or maybe, being that 3 or 4 wide in the Derby, the way we saw the inside bias from the Derby play out in the Preakness, maybe even being as wide as he was in the Derby was the reason for the no-show. I don't know. I can make you a case that this horse is a little bit better than you just laid out. What do you think about him in context of what I'm talking about the Wood Day bias? And just if you have a final thought on him before we move on to the other big news for the Belmont Day.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't disagree with that. I guess for me, it's one of those, he's going to have to prove it to me at what I would think would be second, third choice. I mean, obviously I need to look at the 13 or 14 that are projected, but, and I need to probably catch up on that before I have a better idea. But and like you said, I don't like the change of plans. Yeah. There's just a lot about it that I'm just not crazy about. If here's the thing, right? If Graham knows after the Derby, they cram these horses leading into the Derby. He leaves, Kentucky, ships the horse back to Fair Hill. He wakes up, he has his coffee. They say, what do you want to do with Irish War Cry this morning? He says, oh, we're not going to run him into the Haskell. Let's take it easy on him. And at what point did they decide they were going to stop taking it easy on him and then have him ready for a 1.5-mile race off of a 5-week break? So it feels like a little bit more of an afterthought than I would prefer.
Yeah.
However, there's probably enough time to get him ready. It's just there's a lot of reasons why I think I would lean another direction.
I think my gut from here, if cloud computing is to go, he has not been ruled out. I'm still seeing him listed as possible. Given that, like, in the immediate aftermath of the race, Chad Brown was talking about not wanting to run him. Never seemed like a mile-and-a-half horse to me, I think was the exact quote. If he does show, I'll be so against him that I think Irish War Cry will end up on my tickets. However, if they decide to pass looking at a late summer campaign and Irish War Cry is sort of the hot horse second choice alternative to Classic Empire, then it might be a year to stretch and go longer. But we'll know so much more about all this stuff in the coming weeks as we get a much clearer picture of what's going to be going on for Belmont Day. The other big news doesn't pertain to the Belmont Stakes, but to the Ogden Phipps, as reported by Brad Free this week. Songbird's going to skip the Beholder Mile, avoiding a confrontation with Vale Dory and Stellar Wind to contest the Phipps back in New York. So you basically get, worst case scenario, an equal task of difficulty, probably, I guess depending on field size, equal task of difficulty, possibly an easier task, and you get to run for almost twice as much money. What do you think of that move by the connections of Songbird?
I wish I could see stats for like orbits and kayak, like right after they announced that, to see like how many people are looking up flights. No, it's exciting, right? I mean, it's cool. I think it's really neat that Hollendorfer's never been scared to put one on the plane, and it's even more exciting when it's one of this caliber. So, I think the 1-turn mile and the 16th is probably something that'll fit her style really well, where, big, long, striding, loping filly will just run on the backside. And I think she'll probably be ultra tough there. Interesting off of a long break. I would imagine with a long campaign, there's no reason to have her like fully ready to rock and roll. But I would imagine her 90% is probably good enough to beat what she'll probably end up running against. So it's exciting news, and I think it'll be fun to have her out on the East Coast. I think another point to probably consider is that, and I'm not 100% sure about this, in a casual conversation it came up. So if someone wants to, tell me that I'm wrong, the owner is not in great health, right? Rick Porter's not. He's got a lot. I think he's kind of going through some stuff, and so I believe he's an East Coast guy. So maybe there's part of this decision was to get her over where he can participate.
Health aside, I know that he's obviously run her here before. She's thrived here before, so that makes sense. I hadn't heard that little tidbit, but that's an interesting little wrinkle. Certainly adds some star power to Belmont Day, which is never a bad thing. It does put a little bit extra pep in the step and smile on the face thinking about the tickets that I know I just bought out there in the grandstand. Have you made a decision? Does this tilt the scales for you? Are you definitely in for this year's Belmont?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I've been known to make a last minute juck and jive and make it work. But as of right now, I would say that cloud computing probably has a better chance of winning the Belmont than I do of being there.
I'm just telling you now, I'm offering you free childcare. I'm just throwing that out there. But I will say this segues nicely into the next thing I was going to talk about, was speaking to our friend Brian Skirka, who does such a great job of putting together the Monmouth contests. And he said to me something like, I spoke to Jonathan a while back, and he was all gung-ho. I haven't heard from him in a while. What's happening? I said, the man's been waffling, and I told him I'd try to strong-arm you live right here on today's show. And now I think my odds of strong-arming you for Monmouth have gone way up, hearing your prohibitive odds of attending on Belmont Day. Will you be at the Pick Your Prize contest June 3rd, JK?
Actually, there's probably a better chance of me going to Belmont.
Whoa.
I have a niece's graduation on the Sunday after the Monmouth tournament.
Ooh.
So that's going to make it, either a late Saturday night departure or a Sunday morning departure. And
I mean, that's nothing to you.
It might get a little bit dicey. Well, it's not.
It's taken off like 100 times this year. What's the big deal? One more.
Oh, it's only been like 54, but yeah, no, my June travel might have gotten a little bit mixed up, but I think I might be back in the saddle for a birthday in the Logan. July 1st is my birthday, and it's also the next stop for their tournament. So that could be fun.
Very interesting. I was thinking I was going to skip that one. It was looking like I might be across the pond in the UK, thinking of a little Ascot voyage, maybe do some covering of that for the DRF. If that doesn't happen for any reason, and the winds are sort of blowing at cross currents right now, maybe I would join you for that. So that could be super fun. One more note about Monmouth before we move on. The contest closes on Saturday. There's no walk-up for this one. So if you want to play, get in touch with Brian Skirka. It's $2,000 to play. You can also win your way in a literal last chance qualifier. Last chance, literal, as in it's closed. These are the last two seats. Hopefully we'll get to two at least available on Sunday, tournaments.drf.com. And we've extended the little freebie contest that we announced on this show on Tuesday. If you want to play in that Sunday last chance for free, go to DRF Tournaments right now. Hopefully it's not too late. We're going to extend this till like noon on Saturday. There's a pinned tweet on DRFT. Make sure to follow DRF Tournaments on Twitter and retweet. Your name will automatically be entered in a drawing to win a $126 buy-in for that Sunday qualifier. Don't miss out. That should be fun. I also wanted to make an announcement about a special event. You haven't heard about this one yet, Jonathan. Maybe with your change in travel plans, you'll actually end up coming up to New York for this. You know, in June, Belmont does these amazing Sunset Fridays where they have a 3 o'clock first post. Have you ever been to one of those?
I have not been. No, my bad. Sorry. No, I have not been.
You heard me filibustering and went to brush your teeth, didn't you? That's okay. But they have it's great, and they also, in addition to being able to go and claim a picnic table and do that whole thing in the backyard, Belmont allows groups to come in and actually you can grill your own food. You can't bring in glass, but you can bring in cans, so you can bring in your own beer. So what I have done, in conjunction with a couple of partners, including Barcade, great beer bar up in Brooklyn where you can go play Centipede and then and drink some amazing craft beers from around the country, but with a specialization locally. Revolution Brewery, great brewery from Chicago who've just cracked the New York area. And of course, NYRA itself are participating in this. We're doing a bus trip. You don't have to take the bus. You could also meet us out there. But the real fun thing is meet at Barcade approximately 1 o'clock on Friday, June 16th. We're going to hang out, play a little Miss Pac-Man, have a carton, have a rev, do what we're going to do there. We're going to take a bus. We got a bus taking us to and from the track, drop us off at Belmont. We're going to grill all kinds of stuff. We've got my friend Dale DeGroff agreeing to make us a nice cocktail for the day with Angel's Envy bourbon, who we're working on getting a sponsorship from. We're going to hang out, we're going to bet the races, and then we're going to have the bus take us back. The whole thing, we're not trying to make any money on this deal, just trying to cover the costs of the bus, the beer, the food, etc. So it's $50 if you want in. If you go to eventbrite.com and just search for Beer Days at Belmont Park, that's D-A-Z-E, of course, Beer Days at Belmont Park, you can reserve your seat today. I want to see lots of people from the podcast out there. If you're already from Long Island and it doesn't make sense to take the bus, don't worry, it's still going to be a good deal. Go ahead and buy a ticket and just meet us there. You get admission, you get a program, and check this out. I think it's a cool thing to think about for future gatherings for people to do. And NYRA, very cooperative and helpful, working with us to put this event together. And it's something I think, a way to experience the track that not that many people do and that you can take advantage of. So something to think about. What do you think, Jonathan? Any shot of getting you up here on a Friday?
Yeah. What's the date again?
June 16th. Friday, June 16th. So I was originally thinking of maybe already being in England. We conceived this idea. I decided to push that plan back just so we could do this. It's going to be a blast. And if you come, I'll make you do the handicapping. I was going to do a little seminar on the bus. I'll offload that to you, and then I could concentrate on drinking.
Let's see, June 16th. Wow, that's a potential go for me.
Nice. He says no to Songbird, but he says yes to Revolution Brewery. I like that. You should just move to New York for June, really. There's so much good stuff going on here. But all right, that takes care of all our special announcements. We're going to do a little bit of handicapping in a bit. We're just going to look at we're both in the Santa Anita state of mind still. We'll do a quick look at Santa Anita's Pick Four on Saturday. Here's another question for you. Did you get a chance, Jonathan, to read either of the pieces I wrote about our Santa Anita trip last weekend? One was about Saturday night in the dungeon with Leo, and the other was the Florine Sema story of how he went all in to win Santa Anita at the end. You get a chance to check those out?
Leo, yes. Florine, no. I missed Flo's story.
You got to get that. You got to check that out. I'll send that around on Twitter so folks can have the link handy. It was fun to get it's great to do. Feel like I get enough out of a lot of great stories out of horse players talking on the phone. But when you get to go there and sit and really observe them, I think you pick up on details that you might otherwise have missed. So that's always a lot of fun as far as I'm concerned. So a couple fun pieces from that trip up on drf.com right now. You can also find.
It sounds like not to cut you off. It sounds like for some reason I guess Periscope has changed its tune a little bit, but. Not the podcast, but the
Periscope.
Periscope is still up.
Interesting. What are we up to? Have we gotten to 1.2 thousand?
We are at 1.2 thousand viewers.
Nice. I was feeling so good about this the other day. I'm going to name drop here for a minute, and I apologize. Don't let the name hit your toes. My buddy Chris Jericho, who of course is a famous professional wrestler and an awesome rock star as well with his band Fozzy. He was telling me about their new single, which had just uploaded to YouTube. In the first, 72 hours, 3.1 million views. It made me feel a little more humble about our 1.2 thousand, but that's okay. We can live with that. Speaking of horse racing and social media, I don't exactly know why, but the big talking point this week on Twitter seemed to be about takeout. And it's really frustrating to me because it's one of the hardest topics to talk about in 140 characters. So I wanted to take a few minutes now and discuss the topic at a little bit more length. And it's funny, JK, you and I didn't realize at the time, but I think one gets so frustrated trying to talk about complex issues in 140 that you responding to one tweeter had a one-word response, simply wrong. And then without having seen that a couple hours later, I had a two-word response to a different tweeter on the same topic, totally wrong. So you can see, if we can't say what we need to say, you might as well keep it to a word or two. Here's a chance to go on at more than a word or two. What, from your understanding, started this whole deal? And can you give a little bit more of an explanation of your feelings on the topic? I have a bunch of notes here to filibuster if need be, but I want to start with you.
Well, it was a tweet by Chance Moquette, who I'm assuming is maybe this is a wrong assumption, is the son of trainer Ron Moquette, who had a really big win with Whitmore against AP Indian on Preakness Day. And I don't want to paraphrase, but the tweet's been deleted. I think he actually responded that he was kind of tired of the negative backlash from his tweet, but essentially it was kind of a the sport is beautiful because of the horses and the events and the so on and so forth. And all of this talk about takeout is kind of, shouldn't be the focus. And it's not going to, takeout doesn't affect, the growth. It's about making people fall in love with the sport and the horses and the jockeys and the characters that are involved in it.
Well, boy, that is totally wrong. Do you want to explain why, or shall I?
Well, I just think it's wrong because, look, I understand the argument of the chicken and the egg, right? Which one comes first? But the truth of the matter is that, and here's what my response was, and I feel like I said something, I didn't think that was insulting to him at all. I just said that, I said my quote exactly was, I don't know him, but seems like a sweet kid who really appreciates his experience in racing and what it has meant to his family. However, he's wrong. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm sure that for him, that's what it is about. It is about these wealthy owners who have entrusted their horses with his father, and what it means to win these races on these Saturdays. And the wagering has never become a part of his life in terms of it making or breaking what happens. Whether
do you know why he and other great horsemen have the money to eat?
Because of the wagering dollar.
Correct. Now we're getting somewhere.
Right. And so I just think that it was, I'm not knocking the kid. I'm sure that is his experience in it. But the idea that the wagering dollar takeout and how takeout affects the wagering dollar is not important to the sport. I think it's an inaccurate statement.
It's worse than inaccurate. It's I'll use your favorite word. It's deleterious to the overall health of the game. Such a fundamental lack of understanding about the economics. I think people need to understand where the money comes from here. And I'm not saying that owners aren't important. They're super important. I like the idea of it's a multi-legged stool. But if you look at where the money comes from, it's overwhelming how much of it comes from betting. And not only that, in terms of where the real growth potential is, the other areas, the other income streams for racing are relatively flat. The one that's elastic, the one that can grow, is betting. And
here's the thing. Here's the thing is I think it's important is that, I saw a guy tweet, like I explained to my buddy the other day, this guy tweeted this. I explained to my buddy the other day that, the house takes 25% of the bet, which is it's not fully accurate.
That's
I would
high.
say that the blended average is probably like 17, 18, like across the country. But here's the thing that I think some people might not know, and I actually learned recently, is that of that 18%, half of it goes to the track and half of it goes to the horseman in terms of the person. That's where they get that money to pay the $1 million Santa Anita handicap, so on and so forth.
That's right. So the owners of the money, they do put up a lot of money, but in terms of money they're getting back, that comes from us too. Another thing that makes me crazy, just a couple little pet peeves that are hard to argue in 140 that I just kind of want to get off my chest. I thank everyone listening today for being my therapist, and you, JK, can help me with this too. The idea that takeout is two ideas. One is the idea that takeout is only relevant to players who win or the big customers. It's simply not true. I mean, when you consider the customer's experience at a racetrack, we're already at such a disadvantage to other gambling games in terms of getting comps and things like that, free drinks, whatever it is. And now, and speed of play and all these different things that we have a disadvantage. And now you want to take more money from the customer. I get it. There is a portion of players who are not price sensitive at all, but just because they don't know, you'll hear the tired old argument from participants in the game who are anti us on this issue. They'll say, "Oh, but I stopped 12 people in the grandstand today and said, do you know what takeout is?" And not one of them answered yes. Doesn't matter. You don't need to know what it is. You feel it from the fact that your gambling dollar doesn't go as far as it does in other gambling games and doesn't go as far as it used to. So that's one thing. You need, to me, to just create a better customer experience to get more players betting at the level where they become an annuity for the game. You look at a professional horse player and the amount that they are able to bet now, the amount that they were able to bet 10 years ago. The sport is making so much money off people who can do this at the professional level. And you've got to have a funnel to get those guys for the future. And that's where I disagree. Like Steve Bick, he and I agree largely on this topic. He's very cynical about the idea that we need young people. Look, I don't think it's the primary thing that we need at all, but we do need young people, to me, in the sense of we need them in that wide end of the funnel so we can get enough of them. And it doesn't have to be all that many to bet at the level of the Mike Maloney's, the Duke Matisses of the world, where those guys, again, they become like an annuity for the game, where horsemen, where the tracks are making a lot of money off these folks year after year after year. That's where racing's money comes from, and we need to have that flow in place. The other thing I want to talk about is Canterbury.
Go ahead.
Interject, please, and then I want to talk about Canterbury.
Okay, perfect. So here's the thing. I think that the problem is that there's two trains of thought of how we grow the sport. One of them is a more complex mathematical way of we grow the sport by increasing the amount of dollars wagered, and then how the economic effect of that, how it can trickle down through the industry, and how it can increase the breeding, increase the sales, increase the concessions, increase the data. If you talk about just that side of it, the wagering dollar, the other side of it is by bringing in new fans with the pageantry, the excitement, the day out, the food, the culture, the fashion, the celebrity, all that stuff. The problem that I think that it is that the wagering side of that equation is very, very complicated because it's a lot to try to wrap your brain around, especially if you don't have experience going to the window and betting your dollar. It's hard for people in these executive positions that have never done that to understand how it works. On the converse, it's really easy to understand how you can make an event cool, right? Get Kate Upton to show up. Take pictures of Marshawn Lynch and Michael Jordan at the Kentucky Derby. Have a party where you give free hot dogs and a beer festival and a car show and concerts in the infield, because that's going to bring people there. You're going to be able to say, oh, we've got all these 24-year-olds to show up. But the problem is that those people if you don't retain them for what the sport really is, then they're not going to help the financial economic trickle down effect. And I think that people in the industry gravitate towards that because it's a hell of a lot easier to understand than the mathematical part of takeout and wagering.
I don't think the parties in that aspect are unimportant either. I think that's a great way to get people into the top, into the wide end of that funnel that I've been describing. I think those things have their place, but it can't just stop there. There's got to be some sort of mechanism to try to move them through the funnel and get them betting and get them having fun. And I'm not interested, honestly, I'm not too worried about trying to monetize those people beyond what it takes to pay for those special events. I don't feel like we need to take that much more of their betting dollar, etc. I think you can use that to help move the economic train, but the engine that drives the train is the wagering, and it really, everything should start there. And fortunately, we don't have to choose between the two. And this was another thing that was frustrating in some of the Twitter back and forth. Fan outreach, yes, I agree. And the kid who wrote the post he originally said, he had some stuff in there about reaching out to the fans and showing them how great the sport is. Completely agree. But it starts with the betting. In terms of the monetizing of the game starts with the betting. And I think the more that people inside the game understand that, the better off we'll be. I could go on another rant about why so many people who make their livings in racing don't see it this way. That's for another day, but I will not let us get out of this without talking about, so why didn't Canterbury turn the game on its edge with when they lowered takeout for 3 weeks or whatever the heck it was. But one thing, customer training, it's something that takes a long time. If you're going to get the Dukes and the Mikes and people like that betting, they're not going to drop what they're doing to start playing a new track for when they don't know how long the experiment's going to be going on for. And, case in point, Canterbury and the Meadowlands. However, it's more than just that. When you're looking at the big picture of what's going on parimutually, Canterbury Downs at its peak represents maybe 3% of the total parimutuel marketplace. So you're giving people they're giving them correct pricing on 3% of the items they're looking to buy and mispricing 97% of the things they're looking to buy. That's not going to create an overnight sensation. I know this couldn't happen, but let's just say the takeout nationally could be lowered, and so 100% of the bets were priced correctly. That's the kind of thing where you're going to see a much bigger deal. There's also the issue of product and just where people want to spend their money. And then there's Mike Maloney in the new book, Horse Player, which we're almost done with and we should have on the schedule soon, used a metaphor or an example that I'd never heard before that I thought was just brilliant. And he talked about why people bet so much more into carryovers. And to him, he thought that was the ultimate example every day of how players respond to the correct pricing in racing, that they always bet more. And what effect is the takeout having? It's reducing the effective takeout. And you'll see it every day. Follow a rolling super high five carryover where it goes from betting $2,000 in the first to $8,000 in the third. If it rolls over 3 more races, they're betting $100,000. Players are sensitive to this. The best players do understand it, and the best players are the one who create the most money for the sport. And there's nothing wrong with me to trying to make their experience the best that it can be, and extending that all the way down the line to the $2 better so that we can have more of those big players in the future. Okay, end of rant, unless you have one more thing on this.
Yeah, real quick. But isn't like doing it for like one meet kind of like you walk by your mirror, you're like, damn, I'm getting kind of fat. Let me go hit this gym real quick. You go down there and you jog for like an hour, 30 minutes or whatever, do a few push-ups. Then you get back home, you walk back by the mirror, you're like, damn, I'm still kind of fat. You're like, I'm not doing that tomorrow. Like, don't you kind of need to kind of let it roll for a second? Like, doesn't it need time for like the market to catch up, to understand? And why don't you give it 2 weeks to stop eating ice cream every night, and then maybe you'll lose a little bit of weight? I think it's like a kind of a knee-jerk quick reaction.
That's fabulous. That's a great metaphor, and I do think there is some of that going on as well. Okay, we've got 10 minutes. We've got a pick 4 to talk about. Let's go for it. Race 6, very competitive looking race at Santa Anita on Saturday. I was looking at Pray Hard, number 5 for Baltus, getting the switch from Mario to Bejarano. Looks to me like one who the race shape might fit, being in position early, in touch early anyway, with a nice closing kick. Was also going to mention number 7, Belita Boys. Thought was very close to the top pick last time, despite a legitimate bad start. Those were going to be the 2 for me, but this was a wide open race. I thought you could go a lot of different ways. Who did you come up with, Jonathan?
Look, just give me all the favorites in the pick 4 and go pick up Karen. I'm kidding. Look, this is a situation where this is a tough race, and I'm going to need to see the workout reports before I can actually make a situation. But here's one thing I noticed, and this is something that I've kind of gotten to start doing recently, is when I find layoff lines, I want to see that jump in age from 2 to 3 or 3 to 4. And if I can find those jumps in age with that layoff line, it gives me confidence that there's going to be an improvement off of that. And if Tamengard for Jerry Hollendorfer improves off of how that horse was running as a 3-year-old with that 3 to 4, I think that he'll be tough there. Obviously, the workout report is going to make a huge difference. But you get Mike Smith, you get Jerry Hollendorfer, you're drawn outside going 7/8, you have speed. Those are all the things I like to see. And we've talked about it before. Sometimes in these big fields, there's a lot of confusing things going on. If you can latch on to the favorite, there's so much value there because everyone doesn't know what to do, and especially a layoff horse like this. So I'm going to start with him and then let the workout reports kind of gear me into some other directions. But speed going 7/8 to Santa Anita, drawn outside, is something I'm always attracted to.
I love that contrarian idea you laid on us there with the big field. I mean, my first gut was, let's try to find a little bit of a price. Maybe a lot of people think that. Maybe you get some value on the chalk. Race 7's the Monrovia. I took a quick look and was thinking it basically boiled down to a match race between number 4, Illuminant, and number 8, Enola Gray. I take it from your comment before that you don't have much clever.
No, I was joking. I actually do like one here. Juno. It's been a long time. I feel like I've been like looking at all these down the hill races, and maybe they have to come like, I don't know, maybe they lost all that grass, and so with the grass racing earlier in the year with all the rain, I don't know what it was, but it's been a long time since I found the speed and fade 2-turn horse cutting back, and this one is absolutely perfect. You got a grade 2 Royal Heroine dropper in Juno with Kent DeSormo, who was 6th clear with a red 146 time form number in the first fraction, busted open to a huge lead, barely lost by 3/4 of a length with a number that fits with these, second off of a layoff, blah, blah, blah. It's one of those times where like, you just can keep going. You can keep going. You got, Neil Drysdale, second off a layoff. Like, everything fits for me with this horse. This is one that I'll be really excited about playing and building some things around, especially with Illuminant and Enola Gray taking tons of money. That's Juno for me.
All right, more angles than an octagon for JK, and not just because he's a huge Ellen Page fan. Race 8 is the Gold Cup. We don't get to be out there for it this year as we have the last few. I'm pretty sure we're going to like the same horse here. I'm going to let you start, but when it's my turn, I might need to borrow your wig.
Hold on one second. Let me. I got to go to FedEx real quick and track. My shipment still hasn't come back from Churchill with. I'm sure. Oh, it'll be here tomorrow by noon. So. Not a problem.
It should be good.
I'm gonna give him a shot. American Freedom. I was on that horse so heavy on Preakness Day. I'm sorry, not Preakness Day. On Oaks Day, because of some workout videos I had saw with him just blasting More Spirit. More Spirit comes back and wins. I'm gonna give American Freedom the excuse of being outside on a heavy inside day and running in the slop and being over at Churchill the times they shipped him there. I think this horse is gonna air. And Baffert's going to have a real tough time juggling More Spirit, American Freedom, and that other gray horse that's pretty good. And it's going to be real interesting after this race. I think this horse airs for fun. No Midnight Storm for me ever again on the dirt.
I believe they call that gray horse Arrogate. Number 1, American Freedom for me as well. I'm not going to repeat what I had notes. They were exactly what you just said, mostly highlighting No Chance based on how that track was playing on Oaks Day. The rail was good, especially at 2 turns. He was outside, complete excuse. Let's go back to the well, I Am Freedom, adding Blinks for the silver-haired one. Race 9 is an interesting looking race. Will this be the day? Will this be the day we get to see a Zenyatta foal in the winner's circle, Jonathan?
No, my Zenyatta tattoo is crying a tear right now. It's actually no. If he couldn't win last time, I know there's an argument that maybe he was too early. He moved too soon, and he got a huge setup that day, and he couldn't get it done. And unfortunately, I'm gonna have to root for him, but not bet him. I'm on Amazon right now ordering a Neil Drysdale wig, which I don't even know what one looks like. But,
are you going to steal my horse here?
Yeah, I think I am.
Darn.
Look, when you can find horses like this, first off a layoff, or a trainer that doesn't typically excel first off a layoff, you get Pratt on the grass, and you get the red Timeform US for early speed, and the horse is always forwardly placed. I'm in. So this horse for me, Fortune of War ended up being a nice horse, won that race. So awesome heights ran second in that race, ended up winning after that. Awesome heights for me at what looks like will be a pretty big price with some of that Zenyatta fan money coming in.
Yeah, you absolutely stole my pick. Blind there, number 4, Awesome Heights for me. I was going to make some of the same observations. Basically, I was just going to say the last 2 races just had live looks for multiple reasons. Not only, as Jonathan pointed out, where the pace is fast, sometimes those end up being the key races, and that was the case here, as both of Awesome Heights' last 2 races produced multiple winners. Should be much closer to the pace today. Doesn't look like there's a ton of speed signed on. And then the whole Pratt-Drysdale, how productive of a combination they've been. This is one that could move forward at a number. So number 4, Awesome Heights for both of us. That's a pretty tight pick 4 ticket I think we just gave out. You could even go ahead and spread in the first, and then you could back up if you wanted with the favorites in the Monrovia. Make sure to press up Juno a little bit. Single I Am Freedom, American Freedom, excuse me. I wrote down number 1 Am Freedom, and then in my little lizard brain right there said I Am Freedom. Never mind. And then Awesome Heights and last. Throw in a couple other long shots and have some fun. Anybody else you'd suggest for a spread in the last?
Oh, no, that was the one that kind of grabbed my attention. When I get excited about a horse, I kind of stop looking, which is kind of probably a bad thing to do. But, I would take a look at the horse for Dan Blacker, Ample Sufficiency. I would take a look there. Yeah, I would take a look there, see how the workout report looks. One of the things that this is kind of a handicapping theory idea that I have kind of started to wrap my brain around. I have not perfected it yet. I'm completely against hedging, right? I don't like hedging using horses that you don't like. But something that I think is interesting is if you have a strong opinion in the last leg of a multi-race play, I think there's something to the idea and the strategy of singling that horse, and then the other horses you would have used, you can then use them in the hedge kind of mindset where you can be alive in a pick 4 to this 12-1 shot, but then you liked 4 other horses, then you can come back and bet those horses, with the rest of your bankroll in a more aggressive way to kind of get to that situation. So it's something that I've been looking at doing. It gives you options when you can see a will pay and you know what you're alive to, you can really do some creative things.
The other thing I'd suggest there, and we've talked about this a few times recently on the show, though I didn't listen to it on Preakness Day, you could do the old exacta as hedge, where you play Awesome Heights in second in exactas with the 4 other ones you're looking at on top. I actually hope Ample Sufficiency does really well and can go on to stud, so he can have a child named Redundancy, but that's another story. That's all the time we have, JK, unless you have a quick closing thought.
No, I can't think of anything.
Good stuff. I want to thank Jonathan Kinchin. I want to thank all of you for listening. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. We will be back on Tuesday. May you win all your photos.